Welcome, and thank you for joining us. I am Sue DeCaro here with,
Erin Taylor.
and we are co-founders of Building Connected Communities, which is a company dedicated to bringing people together for our children and our world. And I would like to introduce our special guest that we have with us today. His name is John O'Sullivan. John is the founder and the CEO of Changing the Game Project, which he founded in 2012 after 2 decades as a soccer player and a coach. John is also the author of the #1 best-selling book, Changing the Game, The Parent's Guide to Raising Happy, Healthy, High-Performing Athletes and Giving Youth Sports Back to Our Kids, and is also the author of the book, Is It Wise to Specialize? His writing is featured in many publications, and he's an internationally known speaker for coaches, parents, and youth sports organizations. He lives at home with his wife, Dr. Lauren O'Sullivan, and their 2 children, Maggie and Tiernan. So welcome, John.
Thanks,
We're
guys.
so glad to have you with us.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Great. Well, so we wanted to start out asking you if you could tell us a little bit more about your bestseller, Changing the Game.
Well, the book came out of, an idea, sort of really a transition for me out of full-time coaching and into being a parent for my own kids, and deciding to share some of the things that I had learned over a couple decades as a player and as a coach, and help parents, because I'd worked with so many parents who were just wondering, how do I best help my kid? And I felt like they were getting so much misinformation or no information at all that it would be a pretty good thing to kind of put it all down in one place for them and say that there's actually a connection between joy and performance, which common mythology says that there's not. Mm-hmm. And so that's how the book was born, and then the Changing the Game project was born after that, when I realized the easy part is to write a book, the hard part is to get anyone to read it. And so I started a blog, and then the blog has slowly grown to where now we get 500,000 visitors a month.
Wow.
Fabulous. I hear a little bit of echo here. Can you guys hear the echo? Or maybe that's okay. Maybe it'll get better with your headphones. So, John, can you retell that story about when you were, and I don't remember if it was your son or daughter, but when you were at their little soccer game and you saw the bigger kids on the field next to you? I love that story. Can you share that?
Sure. So this was kind of my aha moment, and I was watching my daughter, who was 6 at the time, watching her play 6-year-old soccer, the big blob, the laughing and giggling, and players falling, and they can score in either goal, and they're equally as happy. And so I'm watching this and thinking to myself, this is what sports is supposed to be all about, right? The kids are having fun, the parents are positive, the coaches are positive, there's no referees to yell at. And so on this particular day, right next door, there's a 10-year-old competitive boys game. And it's competitive not because the kids are competing harder. It's competitive because the adults are competing harder, right? And the kid makes a bad pass, the other team scores, and his coach jumps off the bench and subs him out of the game for making a mistake. And his dad's yelling at him on the other sideline, and he's walking off, and his head's down. And all I'm thinking to myself is, this is crazy. Like, he's with his friends, he's trying to have fun. And he made a mistake, and he's 10, and yet all the adults that matter to him in his life are yelling at him for making a mistake. And sort of the 2 things hit me. And number 1 was, is anyone on my field hoping that in 4 years we can pay more money and spend more time so our kids can have less fun? And number 2 was, who's running this gin joint? And sadly, it was me. It was my league, which kind of led me down the path to writing this book. And basically, that's how the Changing the Game project was born. But that game was a trigger event for sure.
Wow.
That is a powerful story, and I love. It's kind of interesting the way in one moment you got to see the contrast between how it should be and how it actually is, and how it changes over. It's almost like you saw a timeline flash before you from younger kids to older kids.
Yeah, and I often wonder why more people don't notice that timeline, or they feel powerless that the timeline has to proceed exactly like they see it in front of them. In the last 3 days, I've had a phone conversation and an email back and forth with parents telling me about how their first graders were not put in a game by a coach. First graders.
Wow.
And I'm just amazed. One was because the daughter, she had just started playing lacrosse, and the coach said, some of you have played lacrosse before, some haven't, right? She's 6 or 7, and said, so at our first game this weekend, I'm only going to play the players who have played before, and everyone else has to watch. And all I'm thinking is, that's like, imagine your first grade teacher said, we're only going to let the kids who know how to read. Everyone's going to watch them read, and somehow you're going to get better watching them read. Like, it's so sad. It just really breaks my heart that probably well-intentioned coaches just don't get it, and they're not being trained, and they're not being taught, and as a result, we're creating oftentimes very miserable sports environments for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then they continue to grow up in these environments, and it just gets worse and worse.
Yeah, or they, 3/4 of them drop out.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Which is so sad.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think is the biggest obstacle in youth sports today?
Obstacle to participation or enjoyment or what?
All of it. I mean, who do you think has the tougher position? Is it well, I think I know the answer to this. Is it the child on the field, the parent on the sideline, or the coach?
Well, I certainly think right now we're making it incredibly difficult on our children, because our youth sports environments don't serve their needs and their values and their priorities. They oftentimes serve those of the parents, what the parents want out of it and what the coaches want out of it, and no one ever bothers to ask the kids what they want out of it, because if you ask them, they tell you.
Mm-hmm.
It was really, really interesting. This past weekend I was in Indianapolis, and I was speaking for the USA Football, sort of the youth football governing body in the United States, at their coaches convention. And so I did a talk called Why Kids Quit Sports. And as I put the finishing touches on the talk on Friday night, I called home back to Oregon, 3 hours behind, and talked to my kids. It's 9 o'clock at night. And I just said, hey guys, what would make you quit sports? And in 30 seconds, they listed off all the reasons that I was going to talk about the next day.
Wow.
And the fascinating part about that was, I just said to the coaches, I get paid pretty well to travel all over the world and talk about stuff which realistically, if we just talk to our kids, they could tell us this answer. My kids got it in 30 seconds.
Wow.
Right.
And it's really, really kind of shocking. And my daughter, she's 10, she said something to me and it really stuck. And one of the reasons why kids quit is because they don't get to play, right? They get no playing time.
Mm.
And my daughter said to me, she said, well, I definitely wouldn't want to play if I never got to get in. And then she says, but I don't think the coach would care, because if the coach cared, he'd let me play. There you have it, right there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Out of the mouths of babes.
Out of the mouths of babes.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is. So what are some of the things that you think are the most important things for coaches of the youth sports to keep in mind as they do their jobs? You kind of just answered it a little bit, but...
Yeah, sure. I would say it all comes down to this statement right here. You don't coach a sport, you coach a person.
Mm.
And every person needs something different from you based on how old they are and what's going on in their life. Some need discipline, some need a hug. Some need encouragement, some do better with critical feedback, not criticism, but critical feedback. And so a coach has to know all of his or her players and then give them each what they need. That's what great coaches do.
Mm-hmm.
And great coaches do that over and over and over, and they reach more people. You can't ever reach everyone, but that's how you reach more. And so I see a lot of coaches who coach sort of the one size fits all, right? It's my way or the highway because this is how I was coached when I was growing up. And to me, that's kind of a very silly way to coach. The whole, well, I'm done learning. I know everything I need to know. Right? As my wife, who's a physician, says, we used to pull teeth by giving you a shot of whiskey, but we don't do that anymore.
Right.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yeah, thank goodness. No one's thinking that progress isn't bad. Right. So we know so much more about the brain and how people respond to positive versus negative feedback. And we know so much about how to be better teachers and how to run good practices. And yet, so many people they look at all that and say, well, this is how my granddad taught me, so this is what I'm going to do. And that's what's sad. All I ask coaches is really look at the research, look at the information, and look at what kids want. Because if you give kids what they want and you give them ownership of the experience, they're going to play harder, they're going to play longer, and they're going to be accountable for how they play because it's their experience, not that of the coach.
It actually sounds a little bit like a quote, and I'm not going to quote it exactly, but by Dr. Shefali, talking about learning the spirit of your children or the children in your care, whether it be coaching, teaching, or the parent, and creating the conditions for them to rise. Yeah. And as you so well put it, as a coach, understanding each child and what they need, whether they need the hug, the love, the critique, etc. So I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think one of my other favorites, Madeline Levine, says something along the lines of, given the right conditions, every kid will shine.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
That's what we need to change in the world, right?
Yeah,
creating those conditions.
I think a lot of people feel helpless to make these changes, right? This is how it is. And one of the things that I do a lot, when me or the speakers who work for me, when we go to schools and we go to sports clubs, we use a lot of analogies like, would it be okay here, right? I show a video of my daughter playing piano at her first piano recital, and when she makes a mistake, I'm like, does anyone think her piano teacher is going to start screaming at her right now? But yet that same 7-year-old makes a mistake in a soccer game and they get screamed at. And, we don't go... the way we allow sometimes coaches to treat kids, we would never allow a teacher at school to treat them that way. But somehow we switch off, and so I'm always glad to meet people like yourselves and others who are saying, there's a better way out there, and it's a more effective way, and I think really our kids deserve for us to give them the best opportunities possible.
Absolutely.
So true. What a good point. So what tips do you offer to parents who have kids who are in sports and have been for a while, and maybe they're those crazy parents yelling on the sideline, or maybe they're their children are on the same team with those crazy parents, so they're kind of in the system already? What ideas and suggestions would you have for parents like that?
Well, first of all, I'll preface my remarks with this. Everything that I'm talking about here, I'm not the happy clappy trophies for everyone guy. That is not me. That's not what I believe in. What I'm talking about here is competitive sports. I was a professional athlete. I was a college coach. I have players who play professional soccer in Europe right now who've played for me and in the United States. So I love competitive sports. But when it comes down to it, what we know is that the best athletes come out of an environment of love, not fear, and of respect, not intimidation. And so what I say to parents is this: the best thing that you can do, just like I did the other night, is ask your kids, what would you like me to do on the sideline? How can I make this experience better? What do I do that's helpful? What do I do that's not helpful? On the way home, do you like to talk about the game, or would you rather not? And really form that. I don't know, why do you play? What are your goals in this experience? What are your goals for your team? Accept those goals. These are all things that parents can do with just being a little bit better communication. And if you follow your kids' lead, you'll see them do better. And really the three essential ingredients of athletic performance, I would say performance in any achievement activity, school, music, whatever, is ownership, is enjoyment, and intrinsic motivation. And when you do those things, your kids are going to enjoy it more. They're going to own the experience because it's their goals, and then that builds intrinsic motivation to go out there and do more. And if you take away intrinsic motivation, I don't care how fast or how strong or how talented someone is, they're never going to play long enough and train hard enough to be any good at it.
That's a great piece of advice. Oh,
it's not mine. I stand on the shoulders of giants.
I have an interesting story. One of my favorite things that you've ever said is the advice of just telling your kids you love to watch them play. I love that. As soon as you said it, I say it all the time now. They're probably tired of hearing me say it, but my son has played basketball his whole life. Not at a hugely competitive level, but he really enjoys it. And he's 13 now, and I've been telling him I love to watch you play for a couple of years, and I really, truly do. And he was trying to decide, he was on the fence about whether he wanted to play basketball this winter, and he was kind of leaning towards not. And of course I left it up totally to him. It's his life, it's his choice. But I did say, wow, if you don't play, I'm going to be a little bit sad because I love to watch you play. And he said, don't use that against me, Mom. I'm not going to sign up just because you like to watch me play. So it kind of backfired on me, but I backed off and I let him, left him alone. I said, well, whatever you decide. And then he eventually decided that he did want to sign up. So, again, I think that's the best advice, and what you're saying about parents actually having a conversation with their child. What a concept, right? And when you were asking those questions, suggesting the questions that parents could ask of their kids, it almost reminded me of a conversation between two friends or between a husband and a wife, this respectful relationship where you say, what is it that I do that you like, that is supportive of you, that makes you feel better? What do I do that makes you feel worse? Would you rather talk about it? Would you rather not on the car ride home? And it's just so basic when we really stop for a moment and just think about it. What you're saying is basic.
Yeah, and I think to take it one step further, as a parent, when our kids have goals and they've written them down, it's very clear what they want to do. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't think that your actions or your habits are matching your intentions. So you might need to either rethink, what your goals are, or rethink what the commitments you're making to achieve those goals. That's our job as a parent. But it's not our job to say this should be your goal. Jim Taylor, the psychologist, he talks about there's a difference between goals and expectations. Goals are things that might happen, and expectations are things that should happen. We can expect our kids to be honest. We can expect our kids to give their best effort. We can't expect them to score 3 goals or get a college scholarship. That's not an expectation. That's a goal, and there's a difference.
Yeah, then you have to ask whose ego is working there.
Exactly.
Whose agenda is it? If I could just share real quickly, when my kids first entered the competitive scene, they were doing gymnastics, and I was horrified at what was going on in the gymnastics field because the little girls, and they were all very young. My kids were like probably 8 and 10, 7 and 10, maybe even younger than that. They were in the bathroom crying. The mothers were screaming at them. The coaches were screaming at them. And, here I was just entering. I had no idea. It was like, whoa. I mean, I went over to the kids and I was like, are you okay? What's wrong? They didn't want to have anything to do with me. But I remember leaving that day and saying to my kids, look, this is about you. Whatever it is that you enjoy out there, it's about you, and you should be having fun. I will never, yell at you. I will never scream at you. If your coach does, I want to know about it because this is your sport to enjoy as you enjoy it. So as long as you're giving your all and having fun, that's all that counts. But it was traumatizing for me, just being new to that arena. And
I think a coach, we watch great coaches a coach can, I guess there's a difference between shout at someone and yell at someone, right? I would say yell connotates anger and disrespect, and shouting at someone is, hey, I'm raising my voice because you're way over there and you can't hear me. And you look at good coaching, and a coach that has established a relationship with a player that values the person first and the athlete second, and the athlete knows that coach can raise his or her voice to that player because it's out of love and it's out of trust and it's out of respect. It's not out of fear or intimidation. And so I think a lot of coaches watch, a Mike Krzyzewski on the court, on TV, yelling at a player and say, well, Mike Krzyzewski does it, but they haven't seen 99% of what Mike Krzyzewski does in the background, so that when he raises his voice to that player, that player responds, because that's someone who loves me. And one of my favorite phrases for is that the job or our goal as a coach is to build a relationship with our athletes that can bear the burden of truth. And I think that's very true for parents as well, is that we build a relationship with our kids that can bear the burden of truth, because we have to tell the truth. And we can't say great effort when effort is bad. And we can't say, oh, you're the best, when they just lied and stealed and cheated. So it has to bear the burden of truth. And I meet a lot of parents who are afraid to develop that, and I meet plenty of coaches who don't take the time to develop that and then expect the kids to respond to them. The kids don't.
Well, so when you there's another echo here. When you are dealing with parents maybe who are just entering this field with their children, what might you suggest to them? As I was new in that story I just shared with you, it can be quite overwhelming. What tips might you offer to them?
Again, well, understanding this and not giving me age guidelines there, understanding that motor learning, the ability to run, jump, catch, throw, track balls, all that, is a learned skill, just like reading is, just like math is. And I meet a lot of parents who say, oh, my kid's just not an athlete when they're 6. So they pull them out of sports right away. And I say, well, if your 6-year-old couldn't read, you wouldn't just say, oh, well, my kid's just not a reader. You'd say, I got to teach him to read. And so the ability to move your body and catch it. This doesn't mean that some people aren't better athletes than others. Of course they are. But everyone develops differently. And just like we know girls develop reading faster than boys do, well, all kids develop on different time schedules. Some kids grow slow, some kids grow fast, some kids are the biggest, some kids are the smallest for many years. And so as a parent, put them in things that teach them fundamental movement early on. How to throw, how to run, how to jump, how to catch. Fundamental movement comes first. Form and skill comes later. But if you don't learn fundamental movement, right, if your kid's someone who's only played golf his whole life, guess what? Your body eventually breaks down, a.k.a. Tiger Woods. And I'm not saying Tiger Woods is probably a pretty good athlete, but when I see kids who are great golfers and they can't catch a ball, it's a bad sign that they're going to struggle with injuries later. So be patient and realize that this is a learned skill. It's not, my kid's not an athlete. It's my kid just hasn't learned this yet. So find them an environment where they can learn it. And oftentimes early on, things like martial arts are great for learning balance and movement and jumping and all that sort of stuff. And then just be patient. Just be patient, right? You wouldn't yell at your 6 or 8-year-old or get frustrated with them if they're struggling with language. Well, learning a language is just like motor learning, and so we shouldn't get frustrated with our kids when they're struggling with motor learning too. Some people get it quickly, and some people it takes a while.
So lots of patience.
Patience, yeah.
I love those analogies. Oh, the echo keeps coming back. I love those analogies that you're making to reading, and I think that will really help anyone who will be able to listen to our interview with you here, because it really just, to me, makes it all, kind of brings the point home. We wouldn't yank our kids out of reading and say they're not a reader at age 6, nor would we accept if the teacher said, well, only the kids who know how to read can read. I love those analogies because it really brings some sanity back to this topic, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk globally for a minute. What do you hope that this year will bring in terms of youth sports? What kind of changes and developments do you hope to see, or do you see on the horizon?
Well, I feel like there's a groundswell of people. You know, the pendulum swung very far in one direction of younger, more. Higher cost, higher commitments, can only pick one sport, you only have the time or the money to do that. And I feel like a lot of parents are getting frustrated being forced down that path. Mm. And then I feel like, and I think the academic path mirrors this too, with, you know, Vicky at Beyond Measure and the Race to Nowhere and stuff like that, you know, things like that in school, that we're just cramming all this stuff into our kids, and we're basically preparing them for the test instead of teaching them. And so what I'm hoping, and what our goal is at Change the Game Project, is to give parents the ability and the research and the science to say, you know what, this gut feeling I had, I was right. And I don't have to do this. I don't have to go down this path. I can make better decisions. And that, you know, putting your kid on the team of the coach who disrespects and discourages them and treats them like junk but wins lots of games, it's okay not to be on that team. Your child is not, their life is not going to fall apart because they're not on the A team this year or whatever. So our goal is to continue growing and spreading this message, getting more people reading at it. We're releasing an online just course for parents on how to communicate with your kids, that we're giving to all the clubs and schools and everything that bring us in to speak, so that they have tools to follow up with. And we're also trying to educate coaches. So we're doing our first live coaching conference. My friend Dr. Jerry Lynch and I, in July 8th to 10th in Boulder, Colorado. So we're trying to bring in some coaches and say, here's how to coach from the heart. Here's how to build a culture of champions. Here's how you build cultures based on core values and respect. And actually, this is the way you win more games too. And, you know, Jerry's works with Golden State Warriors, and he's worked with 35 NCAA championship teams. So this stuff works. And so we're trying to give coaches the permission to coach that way as well. And what we hope is that, I'm very realistic that all these changes will probably not affect my own kids a great deal and may not even happen in my lifetime, but, you know, most major change is made by people who are okay with that, and I'm okay with that too.
Wow. That's incredible. So I heard about your... It's echoing again. I heard about your coaching conference on the email that I got about it. Is that going to be only available? Will you record it or stream it or make it available to anyone who can't be there? Or is it only a live event?
Well, we're not going to stream it. That's a definite, but we are recording it. And then based upon the recording we get, Jerry and I will sit down and make a decision of, well, you know, what are we going to do with this? Is it something that we can package into an online course for people, or does it not really, you know, sometimes live events, as you know, the true power is in being in that room, and the emotion and the energy and the exercises and the conversations that you have with people. You can't translate that to online, but there certainly might be parts of it that we can. We already have a Change the Game Project, a course called Coaching Mastery, which is a 6-week course of psychology and leadership and culture building and conflict resolution with parents and stuff that really covers, is a great background for a lot of this, and we've put that. We have an online Coaching Mastery coaches group. It's a closed Facebook group, but we let anyone in. Where we have many coaches who are discussing these issues every day. We just kind of expanded it to the public recently in that same email, and I think we picked up 600 people in the last 2 days. So,
Wow.
so that's growing fast and becoming a great resource as well. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how the conference goes. It's the first one. It's really the first thing like this that anyone's done anywhere. And so both Jerry and I are curious on that, but the response has already been fantastic, so that's pretty exciting.
That's great.
That is exciting. Well, we really appreciate the effort and the commitment that you're making to change the game for our kids and to bring some sanity back to youth sports, because youth sports could definitely use it. So we really appreciate all of your commitment and dedication.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
You are welcome. It's our pleasure. So tell us where people can find out more about you if they would like to learn about the Facebook group, the conference, the work that you're doing, your mastery course.
Sure. So our easiest way started our website, changingthegameproject.com. That's the best place to start. You can see the TED Talk I did, get a good overview. That's where our blog is. You can connect with all our social media there. If you need to go straight there, just look for Change the Game Project on Facebook, on Twitter, CTG Project HQ, and that's the best place to start. But the hub is certainly the place where you'll find everything.
Fabulous.
Excellent.
Well, I hope that a lot of people will run and flock to your TED Talk, your mastery class, everything, your Facebook group, because I think really you are bringing such a service to children all over the place with the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate that, and I look forward to continuing to work with you two and cross paths here soon.
Yes, that sounds great. Thanks so much, John. It was a pleasure talking with you today.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.